Hi, this is Dr. Steve, and I'm in my garage again. Maybe it's a metaphor, but I'd like to start a new series, Deep Thoughts with Dr. Steve. I don't know if anyone will watch it, but I've been thinking a lot lately. This year we put together something we call our 10 Habits for Innovation. And I'll put a link to that in the comments below the video here. But we really strongly believe that in order to get wisdom, you have to have two things. You have to have a thinking, because you do have to think and put coherent thoughts together to be wise. But then you have to take those thoughts and you have to test them against reality. For instance, if you build a robot and you put it together and you code it all up and then you go try it, usually you'll find that you did something silly in the process. You hooked something up backwards, or you put some code in that you thought would do one thing and did something else. And so you take that experience from reality and you feed it back into the new thinking, put that back into the new design, and do it again. And this goes around in a loop. You think, you get your ideas, you plan, and then you go try it against reality. And the second time, it's a little better, and reality tells you, oh yeah, that was better. But you should still fix these two or three things. And that comes back again to the thinking, and you just go around this loop. Well, I kind of had my mind blown this morning because I was reading something from the internet, and someone stole my idea. They just totally plagiarized that idea of, thinking and reality, and the connection between thinking and reality. It turns out that there's this guy from the 1800s that stole my idea. Okay. Clearly I'm the one who took his idea, but I didn't know I was taking his idea. And he actually said it a lot more clearly than I did. And he wasn't exactly talking about innovation or technology. He was talking about how words get into our language, and talking about specifically about the topic of imagination. And the idea that imagination is actually required for science or engineering or new things. And it's because there's this, we don't really understand imagination. So as humans, we've been considering this for thousands of years, maybe longer. We don't know how long we've been thinking about this as human beings, but these are the deep questions. Plato certainly talked about this, shadows on the wall, and all the other things that have in our collective Western thought history have led us to this point. But I digress. He was talking specifically about the idea of how new words get into our language. So, for instance, the word emotion. And emotions move us. They make us feel things. And so maybe this person externalizes this and looks at the outside world and connects, the happiness of spring or the reflectiveness of winter, and communicates that to another person who's had the same experience as spring and winter, and says, yeah, I think we should call that emotion. That's the word I use for it. And the other person's, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And then they, maybe they get poetical, and they use that in some poetic forms, and it's really ethereal and exciting to the emotions, and people are like, oh yeah, and the poetic then becomes a part of everyday language. And the author I was reading actually said then it becomes kind of boring, because then everybody uses it and loses its kind of symbolic meaning a little bit, because we kind of pigeonhole it down to this small term of past, past experiences, things that are just settled where we don't need an imagination. But it's this idea that maybe poets are the ones that introduce words into the English language. Well, and that's not a new idea for me, because my wife likes linguistics, and she talks about Shakespeare introducing many, many words into the English language we didn't have before. So people with imagination actually do change the world, and it's because they have these ideas, and then they bring those ideas to us, and we're like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And in my mind, I always kind of thought of imagination as this new thing we thought of, and we bring it out into reality, and then it's really cool. Well, this author was saying maybe actually we are all deeply connected to this, the universe at a soul level. That's a little airy-fairy, so sorry about that. I told you it was going to be deep thoughts, so bear with me on this. So maybe at a deep level we really understand the universe. The problem is we have trouble putting it into words and communicating it to each other so we can, and I always tell my kids communication is when we both have the same idea after talking. So maybe we just haven't come up with the right words to communicate some of these really brilliant ideas, and someone finally comes up with a word, or they come up with a product, or they come up with a movie or a poem or a music or something that just touches that piece inside of us. It's like, oh yes. My wife felt like that about the first iPhone. Yes. And actually, evidently, millions of people around the world felt the same way, because now the iPhone is literally, in half the world's hands. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but really, that's the idea. Is that someone has this original thought and shares it with someone else. It's like, yes, and it's not because it's an original thought. And I know that's going to sound a little weird. But maybe by looking into the universe or looking out there, we see things like, oh yeah, it should be like this, and the way the author was describing this, it was he said it was kind of like the universe is like a human inside out. It's like our thoughts are then outside of our body. It's the other way around. It's kind of a weird way of thinking about it, but when you come back to it and you ask, well, where did my thoughts come from? You kind of realize that your thoughts came from watching the world around you and making connections. And so maybe he's not that far off. Maybe there's just an inextricable connection between what we see outside and this universe of things that are going on inside of our head. And no one can tell me that I'm wrong right now, because we don't actually know how all of these things work. It's possible that quantum mechanics is connected to how we think, and that there are these entanglement things between reality and our brains, and we don't know. The real answer is we don't actually know. And we're struggling to find out, and this is not a new thing. The deepest questions are still there. Plato was asking them, this guy in the 19th century was asking them, and here I am in 2019 now asking them, 2018 when I was putting together these 10 habits for innovators, and this idea of, collecting wisdom continuously. And maybe the deep questions just are always there. Maybe the universe hides them from us. Maybe we can't answer some of these deeper questions. But we don't really know that. I mean, Heisenberg and the uncertainty principle that he talked about may preclude us from knowing some things. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't try. And the imagination is this thing that allows us to kind of really get outside of ourselves and go out to the universe, the world around us, and ask, well, how is it? Help me understand. And then the world says something, we think about it, and then we create something and then put it back into the world, and the world is, agrees with it or doesn't agree with it, likes it or doesn't like it. And so thinking is kind of this ongoing conversation with other people, because at some level this is going on the side of all of us, and with the world around us. And that also was connected to, watched a movie recently called 2047 Virtual Revolution, I think. It was a little thin. I wasn't very impressed with, and it's just, if you go look at it, there's definitely some inappropriate stuff in there for kids and maybe even for adults. But the idea was that in the future we could invent our own worlds, and we get involved in this VR thing, and it was actually kind of about companies running these virtual universes, and about how we may all eventually abandon reality for these universes. And if we do that, something interesting, I think, will happen in our society. So here I am being a prophet as well as a deep thinker here. The world around us is what we use as a common touch point with other human beings. It's where we get our real feedback from. And whether that is reality or whether what's in our head is reality, I don't care what you're calling that. Regardless of how you think about the terminology and the definitions. By the way, that sound that you keep hearing, that's my windmill power supply here, converting stuff. So it's windy today and we're making lots of power. Sorry. So as we go through life, if we don't have an external reality upon which we all agree, or maybe not all agree, but with which we all have to communicate, eating, driving, shopping, taking hikes, having conversations with people over coffee at the coffee shop. If we abandon that, and I don't actually think we will, but I don't even think we should consider abandoning it, I think we'll lose our ability to communicate with people who don't experience the same reality as we do. And at some level, I think that will cause bigger divisions and more problems. And so maybe this is the bottom line. We have to learn to grapple with reality. We have to learn to take our ideas into the real world, put them out, because we can't keep them inside or else we don't grow. So we have to take our ideas out. We have to take them out to the world and say, what do you think? And I don't mean other people necessarily. I mean, other people do count in this because they're part of the world around us. But we have to go test these ideas. We have to grow enough of a thick skin so that when the universe comes back and says, that's not consistent, we don't like that idea, then we don't fall down and cry and throw a temper tantrum, but we instead stand up and say, okay, well, what can I learn from this? And we feed that back into this cycle of reality and imagination interacting with each other. And this is also connected with another idea. Sorry, these ideas so much of this is connected in the world of innovation and just reading this morning just put some great ideas in my head about how these things might be connected. When I always suggest for people who are interested in innovative thinking, like how do you get innovative in your thinking, and I just say new experiences, try new food, go visit new places, meet new people. And really and truly, if your inner world is really small, there's a good chance that your outer world is really small too. You spend time with the same people all the time. You never go outside of certain social circles. You always shop at the same store. You always eat the same food. You always meet the same people. You kind of have the same experiences, and you tend to surround yourself with other people that live in that same world. But maybe in order for us to grow, we have to get a little uncomfortable. We have to open up our universes a little bit and go to a new restaurant, go meet some new friends, go somewhere different for vacation this year. Take a vacation if you don't take vacations. If you can't afford a vacation, go camping. Do something to get outside of your current sphere so that you bring new things in from the outer world. And I think if you're trying to understand how do you expand the imagination and the innovation that's going on up here, you have to bring stuff in from the outside. But it can't stop there, because once that starts to flow in and you start to get new ideas, then you have to take those ideas and you have to put them back into this universe out here, back into the world around us, try them out and see what happens. And then we feed that knowledge back in, and our imagination grows and our experience around us grows. And maybe imagination is just another word for the exploration that's required in order to be human. Maybe if you don't have an imagination or don't think you do, maybe it's just really small and you're not exercising it. Um, but the important thing I want you to take away from this or think this with me, and I don't have the answers on this, but believe me, this is deep thoughts, and deep thoughts do not often have good solid answers. I want you to consider that the idea that the world around you is just you inside out. It's your ideas out there. And if you live in a small world, chances are your thinking is small, or the world you put yourself in is small. And if you want that to be bigger, you have to go explore new places. And the easiest way to do that is to physically explore a new place, a new relationship, a new food, a new location. Go to the beach if you've never been there. Go hike up a mountain, if you've never done that. Obviously with all these things, do it with some wisdom. Collect a little bit before you go. Don't go do something dumb you've never done and drown yourself in the ocean or fall off a cliff when you go up a mountain, okay? But intelligently, cautiously if you need to, go explore the world and expand your universe. Because if you expand the world around you, the chances are the thinking up here will also expand. The things inside of you will expand. And I could probably keep going. I probably shouldn't. But I wanted to put this out there, see what you think, see if anyone likes this, see if anyone listens. But this is kind of going to be a place for me to process out some ideas that are going on in my head, some new ideas. So if you want to know, like, what's the next big thing Dr. Steve is thinking of, come here, engage. And if you want to ask me questions, I'm not real great with social media. I probably won't pay attention to YouTube comments here, although it would be great if you would leave them if they're awesome. If they're not awesome, I can't help it. You're going to post whatever you post. And I'm trying to make friends with everyone. But if you want a dialogue, if you want to talk more about this, we're going to have something called Stump Dr. Steve. It's mostly for the students and the parents that we normally work with, but if you're not part of that community, there's nothing that says you couldn't be part of that community. But I answer some of those questions, and I'll put a link to the forum where we take some of those questions, and you can ask it by video or audio or just type it out. But we need to explore the world around us. We need to find out what universes live in the people around us. We need to see if those universes need to be out here around us. Maybe their universe includes things our universe doesn't. And we need to go explore physically and around the world, the universe around us, so we can communicate with those new people, so we have common experiences and common things in which to base our communication. I think it's going to be a fun journey. So join us. It'll be fun.